Hello and welcome to week 1 of my reading of 10 Tales of Transformation by Gareth Howells. And thank you so much, Gareth, for giving me permission to read from your work. We're going to start off with No Sleep Till Corsylia. Now, because the story happens to take place out in the cosmos, I decided to have some fun with the alien feature on my photo booth, and I also wore my shirt, Dreams Don't Work Unless You Do. I decided not to do the whole reading as the alien face, although I know a number of people actually just listen, so it probably would have been fine. But for people who watch, it could have got a bit much after a while. And yes, I am recording this on a different day. I don't think you can hear the air conditioning unit in the background, but we did get that hot weather, and of course, not just mild, regular hot weather, it's a heat warning, no sleep till Corsylia. And yes, I did check with Gareth to make sure I was saying that right. Everyone was talking about them across the galaxy, from the Corsyl system to the red planets of the Lantric system. Everyone was talking about them. The Brown Yelp Gang, the new face of the future in music. The hype was justified. Few bands had broken out of their solar system, let alone getting their name around a few systems. Part of it was their music, which somehow blended an Aryan opera with the tree music of Corsyl, while not actually sounding like anything like that. In fact, the most consistent reaction from reviewers across the known worlds was total confusion. They'd managed to create a new sensation with their music, blissful confusion. Some bands had cultivated a love of sensuous pleasure with their music, almost making discerning ears a coveted trait in their society. Some bands had mastered lyricism to a new level, with the language of different species across their system being able to sink into their songs' meanings. Some bands were just so outrageous that their following was based as much on their fear of the band as a love of the music. Those bands managed to get themselves in trouble so many times that a few of them are still wanted criminals in the Corsyl system. Part of the appeal of the Brown Yelp Gang was the way they broke down political, social, and racial barriers with their personnel. Within the 5 of them, 5 different species were represented, 4 different genders were represented, and the home locations of all members stretched across the entire galaxy. The band was a moment of genius, a flash of inspiration from the impresario and promoter megastar, Jenkins James. He was known for a dozen or so infinitely famous or infamous music legends and had become one himself. His outrageous parties on the satellite orbiting the Clit Nebula was stuff of myth. Jenkins James, the man who could buy the galaxy and probably bin it afterwards, he came up with the ingenious plan of bringing together 5 different musicians from 5 different species and 5 different systems. All of them would be incredible musicians and would represent their species in ways that would get their whole home planet behind them. It was a plan destined for success. Money and fame were already beckoning, even before the beautiful name was dreamed up, the Brown Yelp Gang. Naming a band after a delicacy on Corsyl was risky, but brilliant, as the fans were soon obsessed with Brown Yelp. That made Brown Yelp happy, made their fans happy, and the band were inundated with Brown Yelp products. Jenkins James had built the last few years of his success on the back of these stellar performers, all five of them hungry for fame and uniquely matched for optimum pulling power. Their lead singer was Trent, a three-headed Kelpian beast, stocky, hairy, and built like a brickhouse. Trent had long snouts on each of its heads and a densely thick monobrow that spread across his harsh facial features. Despite this, he had the most pure and beautiful set of voices the Kelpians could boast. All three heads had an understanding about tone and expression that meant that Trent did far more than sing harmony, he lived it. The Brown Yelp Gang had a very special percussion section. From the planet Hurl, their drummer was a particularly ambitious member of its native population. As all of the indigenous people of Hurl were, the drummer was a symbiotic twin. For both the twins that became the drummer, Deet, their skills were inseparable. The insides of the larger host had freakishly grown to be even more resonant than most of the Hurl people. They were known for the power of their percussive chest, but Deet's host was blessed with a booming, reverberating chest that rang out on another level. To compound this particular member of the symbiont species was extraordinarily adept at getting the most complex rhythms from his host. With lightning speed and dexterous limbs, the symbiont would thrash about wildly inside the host and make the most incredible music. Deet's drum solos were legendary. The melodic section of the band's sound was down to two very special expats from the Lantric system. They were publicly very homesick and patriotic, while secretly being tired of the red sand and bleak landscapes that covered their home planet. They jumped at the chance to respond to the advert for 2 Movines. The advert was very clear. Junk and Janes wanted Movines with some gigging experience and with the full access to all of the notes on the Movine skin. The Movines were a species of pear-shaped bipeds that smooth, hairless skin covered a body that led to a long, protruding snout that was where the music happened. At the end of the snouts were small flaps of skin that vibrated when the Movine made a sound. This acted like a double reed, and through these great snouts fluid wind music was produced. In the Brown Yelp Gang, the 2 Movines were Plax and DK, both highly sought-after musicians with enormous control over their snouts. DK tended to center on the lower notes as he was shorter and slightly wider. Plax had the monopoly on the higher octaves, as he was much taller and could reach uncomfortably high notes. As a team, they were unstoppable, and with the Brown Yelp Gang, they had found their musical soulmates. The last of the musicians that made up the band was Lazy Riff, a name he had adopted from his fans waxing lyrical about how effortlessly he played the guitar. Lazy Riff was the name they gave him, and he accepted it with the humility that brought him the adoration in the first place. He was a fast, dexterous player with odd-looking, enormous hands. Those hands could literally play anything that Riff was challenged with. What kept the myth of his playing even higher on the spectrum of legendary guitar gods was his custom-made guitar. Guitars in his sector of the galaxy usually had between 6 and 16 strings. Riff's guitar had an impressive 17th string. This allowed his melodies to go even lower, to add that extra depth of feeling that 16 strings could never achieve. He played it everywhere he went, and that guitar was as famous as his flowing, long hair or his outrageously straight beard. Together, the 5 of them were perfectly matched. The clever histrionics of Lazy Riff's guitar lines, the playful melodies wafting out of the Movine snouts, the symbiotic polyrhythm of Deet's chest, and Trent's built-in three-part harmonies. They were conquering the galaxy, planet by planet, and now they were a few hours away from playing the biggest outdoor venue on the red planet of Nuffle. Tensions were high backstage as the nerves were beginning to show cracks in the relationships between the members of the band. "Are you going to get the chorus of the swaying song right this time?" Riff asked Plax aggressively. "Yeah, I might," Plax replied facetiously. "It depends on if you distract me with your stink." Plax wasn't the most sophisticated of debaters. "Yeah, you stink." DK was equally as powerful with his words. "Seriously?" Riff looked at them with scorn. "That's your reply? You screwed up last night. The crowd were trying to sing along and ended up just crying." He was right. "Come on, guys, mistakes happen." Trent was attempting to pacify the room from a beanbag below the fracas. "Yeah, we'll mistake you," Plax added, again with little eloquence. "Tonight is important. We can't have our audience crying again. We need them jumping, laughing, letting out their juices and singing along to Trent's noises." Riff was firm and also right again. "Look, we're all tired. I know I'm tired. I can't move my right leg." Trent had got up, but didn't move very far in his attempt to get between them. "I'm tired." A faint, pointless contribution came from a half-asleep Dee, currently laid across the floor, officially meditating. "Exactly." Trent was vindicated. "We need to do this show well. It's our last one of the current tour, and it's our last chance to show these Movines what good music sounds like." Trent glanced quickly at Plax and DK. "No offense." "None taken," Plax said, then made a quick gesture behind his back that only DK would have understood. DK sniggered. Riff was pacified, but still on edge. Trent pulled out a large bottle of liquid from the gig bag. "This'll wipe away the weird mood. Come on, get stuck into this, boys." The bottle was full of pulling water. It was rare to find it, as it was outlawed in many planets in this area of the Corsylia system. The other members of the band gasped as he took it out of the bag. "Where'd you get that?" Riff exclaimed. Deet sat up and wiped his face with his hands to wake up his weary skin. "That's insane!" Deet was very pleased to see the pulling water. He grabbed the bottle out of Trent's hands and guzzled a large portion of the drink in seconds. Plax swiped it from Deet, and the two Movines drank a sizable portion themselves. Trent smiled as he could see he was right to hand it around. The mood of the room totally changed. Deet and Riff were laughing together at the slightest thing, and the two Movines were joining in on the joke and sharing some seemingly random private jokes along the way. The playfulness got hysterical, such was the power of the pulling water, and the noises in the room rose to a cacophony of laughter and shrill joking around. That was halted suddenly by the sudden opening of the door and the appearance of Jenkin, their agent, in the doorway. "Okay, boys." They stopped immediately what they were doing and fell silent. "You got 20 minutes before you're on. Are you all tuned up?" Deep made some rhythmic noises from his belly. Plax and DK played a few scales, and Riff played some Brown Yelp Gang melodies on his guitar. They all smiled a satisfactory sigh of relief, and Trent swiped the bottle out of Riff's hands, who was the last to have it, and put it back in the bag. "We're ready, boss," Trent said, giving his bandmates a cursory smile as he said it. The band always liked waiting in the wings about 15 minutes before going on stage, so they all made their way out of the room with their instruments. Riff grabbed Plax's shoulders from behind and smiled at him, as if there had been no altercation earlier. DK noticed this and smiled at him from the side. It was going to be a good gig. It was a blinding success. The crowd were practically begging for more songs as they finished the last strains of their biggest hit, Show Me Where You Put It. The audience participation was better than it had ever been. The band had discovered that night how melodically and creatively the Movines could join in on songs at a live concert. Plax and DK were very proud to hear the band raving about the quality of the audience, knowing that they were praising the natural instincts of their species. Due to the curfew of the event itself, they couldn't go back on stage, but they had left the audience wanting more, which was far better than finding a song that was justified in following their biggest hit. As they congratulated each other backstage, they could hear the crowd chanting, "Show me where you put it," over and over again, as if to remind them that they'd been on stage. They returned to their dressing room content with their performance and enormously proud of the band. Only 10 minutes later, Jenkin appeared at the door, panting as he caught his breath, desperately trying to speak to the band. He was out of breath and holding himself up on the doorframe. "What is it, Jenkin?" Trent asked, a little concerned. "We did it," he breathlessly gasped. "Did what?" Riff asked, inevitably. "Hold on, I need to sit down." Jenkin flopped onto a nearby set of cushions on the floor and started giggling to himself. "The anticipation is killing us," Trent said, now just eager to know what had happened. "We are the biggest artist in the whole Corsylia system. We are the biggest artist in the whole Corsylia system." Jenkin's words, even spoken twice, somehow seemed unreal to the band. "The biggest band in the Corsylia system?" Deet shouted with a beaming smile on his face. "Yes!" Jenkins shouted back, laughing as he said it and kicking his feet around on the floor as if he was a child having a tantrum. This was a major development in their career. The band looked at each other, taking in the potential ramifications of Jenkins' giddiness. The main planet in the Corsylia system, simply called Corsylia, was the most commercially successful and busiest areas of trade in the quadrant. It would take them weeks to get there, even in the ultra-fast hyperships. Across all of the areas that the band had traveled, this was the most ambitious goal. To conquer the Corsylia's main media strands and have their music played in the capital city of Corsylia. After the initial whooping and cheering had died down, Deet asked a reasonable question. "How in the world did we get to be the biggest band in the biggest cities?" "Want to know what it was?" Jenkins said, with a wry smile on his face, as if the answer to that question was going to be even more shocking than what had already been said. "Yes!" Trent shouted, with all of the band members now staring at Jenkins for the answer. "It was the song, 'How Is Your Hair?' That was the one." Jenkins' words were met with confusion. "How is your hair?" "Wasn't even a single," Deet said, almost sounding disappointed. "We were tanked up with pulling water when we recorded that," Riff added. "It's literally just us chanting, 'How is your hair?' over and over again for 20 minutes. The atmosphere had changed in the room. Elation had changed to confusion. The band were feeling cheated by their muse, with the band regarding this song as their artistic low point, and certainly not something to have hailed as their best hope for success. "Look, lads, it doesn't matter how we got there," Jenkins explained. "The point is we got there." "Yeah, but how is your hair?" Trent scoffed. The band all laughed together. Jenkins could see the funny side of the origin of their success and started to mimic the song. "How is your hair? How is your hair? How is your hair?" with an almost deadpan tone of voice, and a rhythm pattern to the repetition. The rest of the band joined in, now getting over the unexpected source of their success and just reveling in their newfound fame. "Enjoy this moment for a minute," Jenkins said after they'd all calmed down again. "Tomorrow I will make some calls to get us out there, to capitalize on this good fortune." He pointed a finger at them, made a sound with his mouth of a gun going off, then walked out of the room, smiling. The band looked at each other, began to laugh again, passed some more drinks around, and chatted into the night about how they drunkenly recorded the song, "How Is Your Hair?" and how terrible it was. The next morning, Jenkins returned to the dressing room, mumbling, "How is your hair?" under his breath as he walked in, expecting to see 5 exhausted musicians getting over a night of revelry and unashamed craziness. What he found was 5 exhausted musicians asleep, but in an almost empty room that was tidy and without breakages. He sighed a feeling of disappointment at the reserved way they celebrated and woke them all up. Once they were up, he sat with them on the cushions and gave them all an update. "I got up very early this morning, boys," he said in a serious tone. "I got up early so that I could start getting some plans together. I made a few phone calls, and I'm pleased to say we've got a 36-day run booked in the capital city of Corsylia." His voice rose to a higher pitch as he said those last words, grinning as he stared at them. "The capital city?" Dee asked with his eyes wide with excitement. "We're playing in Corsylia?" Trent asked, asking the obvious, but merely through his excitement at finally having an excuse to visit the sprawling, busy city of Corsylia. "You certainly are, my friend." Jenkins' words had now been resolved to a conversational pitch. The initial excitement of telling the band they were about to embark on their most ambitious set of gigs in the band's history was now replaced by a serious discussion of what they were going to do. Jenkins had booked 36 days in a row across the whole city. This was extremely ambitious and afforded the band no time at all to rest. The band raised this with Jenkins, and he simply replied that that's the way they do it in Corsylia. If you want to play there, you commit to a 36-day run with no stops in between. The artists that played in Corsylia did have a reputation for being consummate professionals, and now this band was beginning to see why. The most the band had done as an uninterrupted gig schedule was 13 nights, with a matinee at the end for a child-friendly version of the show. Those 13 nights had taken the wind out of their sails, and they all went into hibernation to recover. This proposed 36 nights in Corsylia was a daunting opportunity for them. Jenkins left his anxious band to get ready to leave the venue, and agreed to meet them later on in the day to give them their travel passes and tickets for the next flight. The flight to Corsylia on a hypership was expensive but fast. Jenkins always liked spoiling the band, even if it didn't make economical sense. He was often as frivolous with how he spent money on them as he was on spending money for his wild parties. As he left, and the band left the venue, they discussed the imminent 36-day tour and the demands it would have on their bodies. In the lobby of the spaceport, they sat beside each other, becoming more agitated about this sudden series of dates they'd been given so soon after their exhausting recent gigs. And next week, we will find out how they manage. This week, we've met the members of the Brown Yelp Gang. That's from No Sleep Till Corsylia in 10 Tales of Transformation by Gareth Howells. You can find Gareth's work on Amazon. He has a number of published works, so be sure to go check out his information page and check out his other works as well. You can also find Gareth on YouTube. I'll have a link to his channel down below. And yes, Gareth does know about musicians and the industry, as not only is he a published author, he's also a musician and a teacher and a father and a very busy individual. I do hope you enjoyed the beginning of this reading, and I'll see you next week to continue on with the story. Until then, be safe, be well, and big hugs.